things are moved to an online sessions. So you're no longer having a lot of things happening in the physical space as a result of the social distancing that is now our new normal, so to say. And obviously, we know that everything has also moved or boiled down to how we do certain things. So this has even affected how we do recruitment and assessment, which is why today's session is very important for everyone to go through. Today we have our guest speaker, Akindele Afolabi. Akindele Afolabi has been with Workforce Group since inception, and he will be taking us through our topic. And this is obviously talking about the strategies for managing virtual assessment and development centers. In the course of our session today, if you do have any question, please feel free to type in your questions in the question and answer box, which is located at the bottom of your screen, and we would answer as much questions as we can with the time frame or the time limit that we do have. Over to you, Akindele.
Thank you very much, Lamide. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar by Workforce Group. So glad that you were able to spare time to make it. Like Lamide said, nowadays we see people. One thing that we see on them is this mouth covered. About 3 or 4 months ago, that was not the case. I'm sure if you had put something like that to cover your face, my people would have been asking you questions. But now it has become a new normal. The question now is, why are you not on this mask? Right? Now it's because of certain things that have changed. In the same way, our workspace now we go virtual. Many of us are working from home and are still able to deliver on our result. So many things have changed, even though we've had this type of technology. Many of us did not really embrace it, rather go for our physical meetings. Now, new things have happened, and we just have to embrace the new. In the world that we're getting into, but one of the consulting firms once said that your employees will not be on payroll time to come, and people anywhere. And so there has to be a way to ensure that getting the right people to work in the organization. And at the same time, the process of getting the right people is very, very essential. Now that we talk of social distancing, there are certain things that we used to do before, we can't do now. For example, assessment center, where before we can have a large number of people come together, but today, because of social distancing, because that has been imposed on us by COVID-19, that is practically not possible. So today, that's why we put together this webinar. One thing that is critical is, as many people say, the right people are vital assets of an organization. There is a process that leads to getting the right people, and we're not going to shortchange that process because we can't see. So that's why today we will be discussing talent selection in our new normal, strategies for managing your virtual assessment and development center. So what we are going to be covering in this webinar, at the end of the webinar, it is expected that we will have learned the best practices and the considerations for conducting virtual assessment and development center, and also be able to identify the challenges to bear in mind when making use of virtual assessment center for selection purpose or even for promotion and all the other uses that you have assessment and development center for. Then finally, we will also learn how to maximize and scale the opportunities that are presented by virtual assessment center. So this webinar is coming to you from the assessment and recruitment business line of Workforce. Workforce Group is is an HR and business consulting firm. And for the assessment and recruitment solution, what we do is we ensure that organizations have the right people to drive their business strategy. So from entry level up to C level, bringing in the right people, and when they are already in the organization, to ensure that they are still relevant in the scheme of things in the organization. One thing is certain, the business environment is very dynamic. And so organizations are faced with new challenges every day, but you must also have the right people to help you confront those challenges. So in summary, that's what we do in Workforce. And I have been with Workforce since inception in 2004, and I have focused majorly on assessment and treatment. And I happen to have also progressed with the assessment technology from the days of using virals, red viral to score candidate test scripts to the day we migrated to Stencil, which was like a breakthrough at that time, because we were able to save time on how long we were able to generate the result. Then we got to a point where we had the technology. It was a scanner then that we just slot in the answer scripts, and it's connected to an Excel sheet, which just brings out the result of the candidate, and it was 100% accurate. And so we finally got to start using CBT, that's computer-based tests, where candidates can now write their test on their systems. But today, that also has changed, especially with new normal. So people now have to write their test. But at the same time, you need to ensure the security of the test, that you have the right candidate writing the test, and that they are not involved in any exam malpractice. So now, remote proctoring is the latest technology, using all sorts of leveraging all sorts of technology like artificial intelligence. All right. So this is where we are today, and for this webinar, we will progress taking the following outline. We will quickly look at Assessment and Development Center, just a brief overview. I know many of us are already familiar with that. Then we will now take it to the next level, which is virtual assessment realities. Just check what are those things that we need to bear in mind when we're setting up a virtual assessment and development center. Then we would also look at the key areas of consideration. There are about 8 of them that we're going to be looking at today. These are areas that you need to pay attention to when you are setting up your virtual assessment center. And also, we will consider the numerous benefits that virtual assessment and development center has given us, and vis-a-vis the challenges that come with them. Again, that would also help us to be able to know how to go around managing these challenges, so that we're still able to get the right candidate. And finally, we will see how you can maximize your virtual assessment and development center to get best. Okay, so since we're talking about talent selection, right? Let's start with this. I guess this will be comforting to some of us. If you have been disappointed before because you hired the wrong person, I would like to say that actually not alone. Many of us have also experienced that. And I think at this point, we can just take a feel from everybody on this webinar. I would like us to quickly take a poll where we'll check what is our take on if we had a wrong hire or not. So the poll will come up now, and we'll be able to put in our responses.
You should see a poll come up on your screen for you to be able to check and obviously vote. Has the organization ever made a wrong hiring decision before? We'll give a few minutes for people to respond, and then the poll will close. Okay, I can see people are responding. Interesting figures we're getting here. We'll just give it a few more seconds and then we can close the poll. Okay, we can see the statistics. Thank you so much for everyone who who logged in the details or logged on their responses on the poll. And it's interesting. I mean, we do have a large number of people, at least 81% of our participants on this session said yes, they have made a wrong hiring decision when it comes to selecting talent. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay, so we can see response on that. 81% agree with the fact that at one point or the other, had wrong hire. Now, the question is, what is responsible for this hire? Why do we end up with wrong hire? According to a survey by Brandon Hall, they identify several things that are responsible for contributing to bad hires. And the one that has the highest rating there is 68%, interview process. This is followed closely by the hiring managers, which include the people that the bad hire report to the organization. Then we'll look at screening and assessment, which has 48%, and followed by candidate experience. Now, one thing that you can see clearly from this research is the fact that the interview process has the highest need. Now, and the question is, when we go through interview process or the screening and the assessment, how come we are not able to identify wrong hires? So it means then that we need to pay a lot more attention to the process that we take candidates to determine whether they're suitable or not for our organization. Because if you look at this vis-a-vis the cost of bad hire, then you would know that you shouldn't joke at all with your talent selection process. Now, let's look at this. This is a question for every one of us. What is the true cost of a wrong hire? You can type in your response in the chat box. Let's just see what we consider to be the true cost of a wrong hire. Lamdi, can you help us with the responses?
No problem. So you can use the chat box to type in your response. What do you think the true cost, or what is the true cost of a wrong hire? You can use the chat box to type in your response.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Wait for a few more.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see. Poor performance. Interesting.
Okay.
Any other response? Drop in sales, production. I like that. Poor performance too. Okay.
All right. So we can see what we consider as the cost of wrong hire. There are a number of costs associated with having a wrong hire in your organization. There are those that are external. Some of them are internal, and there are some that are very obvious. Many of us, we are quickly able to reckon with maybe what you pay your recruitment consultants to identify the candidate for you, or the time you spend on that. But truly, the cost of wrong hire is more than this. Now, if we look at the people in the organization that are impacted by a single cost, by a single bad hire, then we will know that we shouldn't at any point in time joke with our talent selection process. So quickly, let's look at who is impacted when you have a wrong hire in your organization. Now, the first is the organization itself. Just like somebody said, there will be loss of productivity. There will be a lot of error and loss. So imagine the wrong hire delivering a poor job to your customer, and you have to rework that again. So consider the time that will be spent on the rework, which is supposed to be spent on something else. Also look at the cost of the rework. Then your customers will start leaving because poor job is being delivered to them. There is immense financial loss associated with that, reputational risk, where you begin to lose reputation for quality from your customers, and business continuity, because if you are not able to generate income because of losing your customers, you're not making money, business will likely collapse. Then another loser when you have bad hire is the manager. The manager will now have to probably take on the job of bad hire to ensure that things go right. And that will lead to work-life imbalance. The manager will not be able to be more strategic in the organization anymore because he or she will not be involved in the tactical things that the bad hire is meant to be doing. Poor result will be delivered, high blood pressure on the part of the manager, career stagnation for the manager. I mean, many of us can witness this when you are not able to deliver on what the organization expects from you because you have people reporting to you that are not able to pull their weight. Then there is no way that you are going because what the organization will likely tell you is if you are promoted, then who takes over from you? Then eventually it will lead to job loss of the manager. So you see that it's not just the bad hire, it's going to be impacted. Then you have your current customers too, likely impacted by just a single bad hire because they will get poor service, and when they get poor service, they will likely leave. They will get poor quality products. When the experience with the organization is not inconsistent, today you're good, tomorrow it's bad, then they start to consider alternatives to your business. And also you have lots of income and opportunity to do more with them. You also have your new employees also losing out on this. There will be low self-esteem. They will be dissatisfied, and so even the effort that they probably might want to make to adjust, the motivation is not there. And when they are thinking that they are not pulling their weight, that they are likely going to lose the job, it leads to a lot of frustration. And the likelihood is that they will continue to make more mistakes that would impact other areas of the organization. And finally is your current employees. They are likely going to have increased workload because your new hire has refused to give up the expectation. When they are carrying more weights, there is a level of expectation that they would have that since they are doing the work of another person, that the organization is supposed to also compensate them for the additional work. And when this is not coming, according to the equity theory of motivation, one of the things that people do is to lessen what they do in the organization, just to give them a sense of equity with the pay that they are getting. And there could be conflict, then they start to feel insecure too. Excuse me, what is happening in the organization. So these are the several causes of wrong hire. Now, there is an interesting thing here. There was a survey that asked the question, at what stage people get to realize made a mistake with their wrong hire. Now, this is a report of the survey. 52% claimed that they were able to identify their wrong hire after the onboarded staff. So at this point, it's almost too late, because what you are now thinking of is what should you do? Many times we try to see if we can push the person to another role, or we're battling with, okay, letting them go, and so many other things. These are a lot of distractions to you and to your organization. Then 31% claim that during the interview process, and if you look down, 6% during the onboarding process, 4% during the screening, 4% says also that during the assessment process, which we pass to the period that you testing the candidate, and just 1% while generating comment properly. So it's so unfortunate that it is at the point of after you've onboarded your staff that you just realize that you have made the wrong choice. So now the question is, what now happens to the talent selection process? Why not? Why were they not identified? Okay. And I think this borders more on the quality of the selection process. All right. There are several methods that we are used to. Many of us sometimes we run interviews, take them through some tests. Not so many people run assessment center. According to a study, about 80% of people agreed that assessment center is more valid than any other assessment talent selection tool. But out of that 80%, just about 23% of them actually use assessment center. And statistics has shown how great an assessment center is. According to several studies, several surveys by CIPD, SHRM, British Psychology Society, many have come to conclude that assessment center has the most predictive validity when it comes to talent selection. And the statistics you can see on your screen compares assessment center with other tools like the structured interviews, which has about 0.5 predictive index, compared to assessment center, which is at 0.7. Again, it's not saying that assessment center is perfect, but when it's properly designed, it has shown a very great extent to be able to predict performance on the job. And many organizations that use assessment center in their selection process, they record low or zero wrong hire. Because most of the things that are required to be successful on the job, they are assessed during the assessment center. Okay, so let's now focus more on assessment and development center, which is what we're looking at today. I'm going to just run us through what an assessment and development center is, just focusing more on the critical areas. So this definition is by the British Psychology Society, and it's based on the ISO 10667 assessment standard that is adopted globally. So it says, it defines assessment center as multiple assessment process. Please, I'd like you to pay attention to the parts that are underlined, because these are critical parts that if they are missing in an assessment and development center, then you cannot say that you have an assessment and development center. So the first thing there is the multiple assessment process, which means that you're doing quite a number of things, right? Starting with identifying what you are able to assess in the assessment center, going as far as designing the most valid tool that you can use to validate the competencies that you are assessing. Then it goes on to say involving a number of individuals. So the argument is, if I'm putting an assessment center for one individual, doesn't mean that it's not an assessment center. All right. That has been a long debate, but I want to agree more with this standard by the British Psychology Society, which is based on the ISO standard assessment. And the reason is there are people who don't work alone an organization. You work in teams. Okay? You work with another person. And so there is no way you can assess someone individually without putting into consideration all the work settings that they will be involved in the organization. Then it says undertaking a variety of activities and exercises. In other words, it's not just, you can't run an interview alone and say you are conducting an assessment center. You have to use other tools. And it is observed by a team of trained assessors. What that simply means is it's not everybody that can do assessment. They have to be trained in the ORCE methodology, which is the observe, record, classify, and evaluate. This is the process that every assessment center normally follows. You observe, record, classify, and evaluate. Everyone that will be an assessor must be properly trained. So you can't just, because you claim that you have an assessment center, just call in a manager or someone from the HR department and say, okay, come and do this, come and be an assessor. It doesn't work that way. You are likely going to lower the quality of the assessment center when you do that. Then it evaluates performance against a set of predetermined job-related assessment criteria. In other words, before you even jump into the assessment center, you have identified the criteria that you want to measure, which are the criteria that are responsible for success. And you design your tools to assess that. So what the assessors are actually doing is to evaluate the performance of your candidates in the assessment center against those criteria, whether they have them or not. So that's what an assessment center is, and that's why above any other talent selection methodology, it's seen as more valid because of this feature. So none of this can be missing if you are going to have valid assessment center, right? Now, just like we said at the beginning of this webinar, why we are doing this, our lives have changed. And now the new normal, where every one of us had to adapt our lives to this technology. Now, technology has been on from the beginning of life, even when things were still. People started graduating from one level or the other, just like I related the experience in workforce when we started with paper, stencil, scanner, now we had CBT and online remote tutoring. This has been a series of technological changes that has affected how we run assessment. So this also has impacted the way we run assessment in this age that we have. And this has now been more pronounced because of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has made most of the things that we do to go virtual, right? And many of us now are forced to adopt a new rules. Now, I would like us to, at this point, because of this technological change that we're talking about, let's quickly take another poll to just see how some of us have been able to manage our assessment, especially since we had this COVID experience. So I'll call on Lamide again to take another poll.
Okay. So you should see another poll on your screen now for you to let us know how have you executed your assessment center since the outbreak of COVID-19. We've got a couple of seconds. I can see we're having different people in terms of what they think assessment center or how they've executed an assessment center since the outbreak of COVID-19. Okay, we have a couple of people that have voted. Thank you very much, everyone that has voted. We'll wait for a few more people. Okay. We have about 10 more seconds before the poll stops. So if you want to cast in your poll, that would be great. Okay. Thank you very much for everyone else. Thank you. The poll has closed. It's an interesting result that we do have here. So we can see about 41% of people actually said they utilize virtual assessment center. It would be actually that's an interesting one. For some people, they mentioned that they're still considering their options, whereas we do have another percent of people that have said that an assessment center is not a priority for them. And we have a very few number, which obviously relates with our current realities. People that talked about we utilized physical assessment center. We can see that we obviously have more people that have that are more in tune with the virtual assessment center because of what our current reality is. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Lamide, and also to everyone that responded. This is very interesting. And I think the result we have here, the 41% confirms the need for virtual assessment center. And I believe that, for some of us that have embraced this technology, there is more for us to learn from this webinar. And for those who are still considering their options, it's also a good thing, because now from this webinar, you'll be able to learn many other things that you need to put into consideration before you now finally settle in for what it's going to be. So, okay, so for those of us that started utilizing assessment center, and for others who are saying it's not a priority for them, and those who are still holding on to the traditional method, let's see what we mean by virtual assessment center. Okay? Again, I like to take it step by step so we understand what actually it is. So, virtual assessment center and assessment and development center is simply the use of technology to remotely assess candidates or job applicants or existing employees in an organization. So, what we're simply doing with virtual assessment center is that assessment and development center that you do in your physical location, you're not doing it virtually. Okay. Now, again, many times when it comes to technology, many of us are excited and always believe that this has come to make things easier for us. But let me just say this, right? If you think that going virtual eliminates the rigor of assessment and I'm going to sound need to be very, very cautious because the rigors of assessment and development center is part of what makes it have that level of validity 0.7 that it has. So to think that because we're not going to leverage the technology or we're going to vote and all that, take out those rigors, we need to be very, very careful. Okay? So there are certain things that we need to consider when we're thinking of virtual assessment center. Okay? And this has to do with both the individuals and the organization. Okay? Now, the first thing is the psychometric content of the exercise and the structure must be maintained, right? If you're going virtual, what is being done in the physical assessment center? What makes it able to measure behaviors appropriately? You cannot, it can't be lost because you are going virtual. Then again, well, if you're using computers either to run the administrative part of the assessment center or to deliver the exercise or to score, the same quality, the same ethical criteria that apply to traditional method of assessment center still applies. Right? So, I mean, when it comes to, for example, starting with understanding the job, coming up with measurable criteria for the job, developing the right tools that will be used on your technology virtually, none of these things can be compromised. You still have to maintain the standard. And the other critical thing that you must bear in mind is your virtual assessment center must be relevant to the content of the jobs. So we won't say because we are using technology, we're going virtual, you just put out an exercise, all because it's available virtually, right? And adopt that for people. And again, it has to be simple to understand. It's not everybody that has the same technological know-how as you. And so the instructions that you will pass across to them, the things that they will have to do, must not discriminate against them in any way. It has to be fair to all groups. And this is the time also when you consider people that may have one form of disability or the other that could impact their use of the system. Then it must have the ability to predict future performance. So in some of the engagements that we have had with some people that have tried to do virtual assessment center, we've seen that people try to embrace the technology without the principle. So they just go for what is available, right? Because they have to do the assessment center virtually, but without bearing in mind the nitty-gritty of the assessment center. Then on the part of the candidates, right, certain things, certain conditions have to be in place for them to have a successful run at the virtual assessment center. One is the technology has to be reliable for everybody. You are likely going to have multiple people connect to the system, other candidates, the assessors, you have observers, and they have to do this in real time. So the technology platform that will be used on the part of the candidate has to be able to sustain this. Many of us are still battling with internet bandwidth, which is one of the challenges with virtual assessment center. But all these has to be properly in place. Otherwise, the process may have been compromised, right? And your candidates will raise questions as to the validity of the assessment, because they were not able to put in their best as they should. Then it requires a quiet environment, just like with a proper environment to have a physical assessment center. In also the same way, the candidates who must have a quiet environment to be able to have the assessment center. Then relevant levels of security. Now, this actually comes from the organization that is setting it up. You must ensure that candidates are able to install on their systems. You're using a platform where you need to lock the screen. You can't go outside the exercise view. And that you must ensure that there are no firewalls that will block that on the parts of the candidate, so that you can use your virtual assessment platform. Then also is the organization of the assessment center. You have to consider the individuals. Don't forget now that because you are using virtual assessment, it means that you can practically assess people all over the world, right? So you need to bear in mind if, for example, you schedule your virtual assessment center for, let's say, 9 a.m., somebody in the US probably still be sleeping at that time. So these are some of the things that you have to bear in mind, and there are ways to go around it. Okay, so we jump quickly now to the potential pitfalls that we must focus on when you are considering your virtual assessment center. Don't forget that the essence of doing this is because now most of the things that we do are done virtual, and you need the right talent to be able to drive those conversations. New skills are required as a result of the way things are now. So you must be able to assess for those skills before you add anybody to it. So virtual assessment center is the approach to be able to assess your candidate wherever they are without violating the social distance principle that have been put in place. So it is very important that we all pay attention to those things that could lower the quality of the output of the virtual assessment center. So we're going to look at these 8 potential pitfalls, starting with assessing the wrong parameters or dimensions. The second one is using irrelevant assessment techniques or using unskilled assessors, not maintaining the security of the assessment materials, allowing variations in administration, producing an overly burdensome program, not factoring in cultural considerations, and the challenge with managing proxy. So we'll take them one by one. So assessing the wrong parameters and dimensions. This is the first failure point of any virtual assessment center. You can have the best technology to drive your virtual assessment center. You can have the best trained assessors, but when you are assessing the wrong parameters, you are not going to get the results that you're supposed to get from that. So it is every assessment center starts with a careful study of the target job, where you do your proper job analysis. And from your job analysis, you are able to identify the key criteria that are required for success on the job. And this is now what is going to inform your tool that will be used. Now, what this means is that when you have the option between customized and on-the-shelf assessment tool, when you start your assessment center from the job analysis, you are able to decide whether the tool that you can get from the shelf is valid enough for your assessment center or not. Otherwise, you just go the way of customize, which means that your assessment tool will now have to be developed from the parameter, the dimensions that you've identified as critical to the success of your job. So you need to understand that it's not about the platform, it's about the parameter that you are going to assess, right? And this is also what should inform the source of your assessment tool, because many times you find tools that are already in the market, they may not totally address the dimensions that you're looking for. So your virtual assessment center is planned for failure if you neglect to identify the parameters or competencies that are central to the purpose of the assessment. And why this is important is because it will now further inform the design of your tool and what platform that you can use. Okay. Then the second area of consideration is using irrelevant assessment techniques. Now, the truth is, virtual assessment center has a great case validity, because most of us, what we do them on our systems. Most of our jobs are done on the system, of course, not for everybody. But we also need to be careful of the instrument that we adopt at the end of the day to measure the criteria that we are going to be looking out for. Okay. Now, fidelity of the assessment is very important, and by fidelity I mean the extent to which the exercise and the technique that you are using reflect the job or that the candidate is going to be doing. So, for example, if you are running an assessment, let's say a development center, to identify potential to move to a future role, and you have another one to train finance managers to be more effective. So for the second one, you're probably going to, your exercises, your techniques will reflect the role, which is that of the finance manager. But if this is all about identifying potential, you don't have any role in mind, then it will be wrong, even if this person is a finance manager, to give such individual an exercise that is built around financial management. Because what you are trying to do is to identify broad potentials that the individual has. And at the same time, too, this is when you now have to think of whether you will go the way of customized or off-the-shelf instrument. Okay, because many of the customized instruments that you might have may not truly reflect the job. Okay, so like I say, you might as well just have to create your own tool. Okay, then a platform that you use, okay, should not place demands on candidates which would affect their ability to demonstrate their competence. Now, this is what I mean. You can't, for example, ask them to use a software that they are not familiar with, that is not relevant to the job, right? In an assessment situation, it's going to impact on the output of the virtual assessment center. They are likely going to fail in such exercise, but again, it's not really their fault. It came from the technique that you are using. So this is another area for those of us that are already using the virtual assessment center and those who are still looking for options that we need to pay attention to. Now, the third one is using unskilled assessor. Now, this is even more important than when we do the traditional assessment center. Because many of the platforms that we have for your virtual assessment center, they already have structured responses where what the assessor has to do probably is to just pick an option, maybe like candidates demonstrated this competence or candidate did not demonstrate this competence. So many times we think that it's a simple thing, okay, that we can use anybody to act as an assessor because they are just going to be picking options on the system. No, that's not the right decision to make. Anyone that you are going to use as an assessor must be trained in the methodology of observation, recording, classifying, and evaluating. Because the truth is, yes, candidates may have, in case of an analytical exercise, for example, or inbox exercise, candidates may have used the platform, provided their responses, and the assessor come later to classify and evaluate the behavior. Now, it takes a trained assessor to be able to see a response and know that this is a positive indicator of a particular competence or a negative, and be able to make the right judgment based on what is the candidate has imputed. So this is very important. It's not just about, because virtual assessment technology has given us the option to be able to pick scores. Okay? That's not the most important thing here. Then we should also be careful when we use automated scoring mechanisms, because they most times don't give room, for other nuances, other behaviors that the candidate might be able to demonstrate. What the system will have done is to give you a list of behaviors, but the question is there all, are those all the indicators of that behavior? So most platforms that you see, they give a list of maybe about 4 or 5 competencies, and they ask you if you can see that the candidate demonstrated them. But there could still be other behaviors. And that's why you need trained assessors, especially when you are now doing exercises that involve a lot of people, where the assessors need to observe live. For example, maybe your group exercise or your role play, right? People need to be able to not limited to those options that the system has given them. So we need to be careful with the system that suggests typical responses to us. Then for your assessors to be trained, there is also the danger of human error. There are biases that people have that if they are not well trained, right? So we've seen instances on virtual assessment where where assessors have made judgment because of an impression that they had about the candidate. It could be the first impression they had about the candidate, which they now allow to cloud further evaluation of the candidate. Things like halo and on effects, things like primacy effect, where people remember what they see in the first instance and maybe at the end also of a conversation. Assessors need to be trained to be able to address these things. Then the other one, the fourth one is security and integrity of the assessment materials. Now, it is a standard thing that when you are running a virtual assessment center or even the traditional method, you want to validate your tool. So most times you get subject matter experts to validate that. And that means also that you have to make the tool virtually because you also want to simulate the environment. Okay? So you need to be conscious of the possibility of hackers getting access to your tools. Okay? You also need to be careful that there are smart candidates, especially when people know that several other people too will be running the same assessment with them, or in your organization, maybe you are running a development center and you are doing it in batches. So some people that may be exposed to the tools may know what it is and probably even take screenshots and share it with others. If that happens, the standard has been compromised already, and that assessment cannot be regarded as valid because some people now have an undue advantage. So you need to be conscious of these things. There are systems that you can use to lock down your screen such that people cannot go outside the exercise and they can't take screenshots, they can't print, they can't do anything. Just to be sure that your assessment exercise are not going out or you conduct a proper assessment. Then allowing variations in administration. There has to be a standardized procedure for every virtual assessment that you are going to run. All the candidates must get the same set of instruction. Whatever you are doing to candidate A must be done to candidate B. And you also have to bear in mind that people also have, they are dealing with different issues. For example, connectivity. So you need to factor that into your design from the onset to know that there is every likelihood that some of your candidates might be having connectivity issues. So there are some exercises where maybe have videos, right? You might want to consider using maybe just pictures to depict what you are going to do so that your candidate would be able to play the video at their other end. And also, you need to always be conscious that you might have candidates that have one disability or other. This is part of what you need to factor in into your assessment, virtual assessment center. So you also have to put in their interest into consideration when you are designing your virtual assessment center or when you're choosing your platform. Then producing an overly burdensome program. Now, there are many resources that are required for your virtual assessment center. You have the center designer, you have the center manager, you have the assessors that are going to be involved. You could have role players too. In case you're using, you have actors when you're using role play, and the time that is involved in planning, generating a report. So you won't say because we're going virtual that can now take more people than you can manage per time. It has been found that this usually compromise quality and standard of assessment when people become burdened what they are doing. There is also a standard as to the number of exercises that an assessor can take per day before they are tired, and that human element will come in. So all these things need to be factored in when you are designing your virtual assessment center so that you don't end up using the right candidate because, for example, your assessor is tired and he or she is not able to pay more attention to candidates. Then there is also the element of cultural consideration. With the fact that assessment has gone virtual, it means that you can have access to people from cross-cultural settings. So these are things that you need to look out for. If you have people from different cultures, you need to understand, because there are certain things that you might, certain definitions, certain dimensions, competencies that you would define in a particular way, that to some culture it could be offensive. All right. So these are things that you need to bear in mind. I mean, the traditional assessment center, you can quickly address that because you're seeing the person face to face. But when it comes to virtual, you have to build that into the system from scratch. Right? Then finally is the issue of managing proxy. How are you sure that the candidate that have sent the invite for virtual assessment is the one that is sitting down to write go through your virtual assessment center? So you have to consider one, accreditation process. Whatever platform that you're going to use must have that ability to accredit your candidates into the assessment center and be sure that it is the right person. Not only that, you have to be sure that people are not trying to play some pranks, by having other people around to help them. And so this is where solutions come in. Then also you must have a robust system that is able to shut out any plugins. Because one other thing we've identified is some candidates have plugins on their system that is able to crack into your technology depending on the platform that you are using. You also have to be conscious of securing your content. Okay? The platform that you are using, if it's from your in-house or you got it from a provider, you must be sure that people that you have exposed your materials to don't have any way to be able to steal it in whatever form that you can do that, through screenshotting, either through some plugins and all that. So all these things have to you have to bear them in mind when you are designing your virtual assessment center. Right? Now we will jump quickly into the benefits that we derive from virtual assessment center and the challenges. And we're going to be looking at this in three different areas. Now the first one is the administration. Of course, you are able to reduce your overall cost when doing the virtual assessment center. So that means that there is no need for a physical venue. You probably also are not going to have to make provisions for tea or lunch or whatever. Your candidates, you're not going to print any material because everything is on the system. You probably have no need for any multimedia facility, right, to use. So if you look at it overall, you are saving a lot of time. Virtual assessment center. Then again, the cycle time is quicker because you now have your assessors able to use the system. In cases of system generated evaluation, or even if you're doing it virtually, you can quickly do that. Then it gives room for standardization and control. These are some of the benefits. Now, there are challenges that you have to deal with when you're running this. And the first of that is your bandwidth or firewall issues. People that probably using their system, some may be using their office systems and all that, where they have firewall installed, which impacts on them being able to run the virtual assessment on the system, or even for some other things like bandwidth, right? The quality of the assessment is already compromised when people don't have access, maybe because of internet breaking in between, right? When they are running the assessment, it means that they are wasting time. They are not able, because you time your exercise, so they are not able to spend their time in the exercise. So you just have breaks in between. Then there is the need for system and data security concerns. You have to battle with how do you ensure the security of the instrument? How do you ensure that people don't hack into your system? You would most time also need support from IT Again, this depends on the platform that you are going to be using. And there is one other thing, the perks and the pros of the physical assessment center where you have people come together. I mean, I used to love that a lot. I remember a project that one of our clients where we did an assessment center for 1,002 candidates in three different locations in Nigeria. So him had to travel these locations. Made the experience seeing everybody going into the plane, coming out, walking, be taken by the bus, center, and all that. You're not going to have all those things. The workshop process that you normally have after your assessment center, this is going to be done virtually, where people debate on candidates. Now, it's going to be done virtually. Again, you consider technology when you're doing that. Now, the second area of opportunity and challenge is the delivery. Okay. One good thing about virtual assessment center is the fact that because most of us do our work systems, okay, so that environment is also being simulated. It also means that participants can work from, they can be part of the assessment center from any location. You're able to manage your time it takes, for example, to transit from one exercise to the other. We are using multiple rooms. Maybe you're changing assessors, moving from one point to the other. You are able to save on all those times. But again, that also comes with its own challenges. There are certain roles that do not particularly rely on technology. People don't have to use systems to do it. For example, if you consider some engineers, they're probably working on the rig and all that. So maybe if they come to work, they just maybe run the program or whatever they are done, and they have to go to the field. So you need to factor in those people, how effectively you can use virtual assessment center for them. Then another thing is managing proxy, which I've already spoken about. And it might be a limit to the extent to which your clients can be involved. We've had a number of times that clients want to be present, they want to see how things are going, the candidate experience. But in this case now, they're going to be doing that. It has to be done virtually. Then also is the opportunity offered in the area of evaluation. So virtual assessment is appropriate for most competencies. Then you can get more data, right, from the candidates to be evaluated depending on how the exercise is designed. And it allows for asynchronous scoring, which means that the exercise can be done now, and the assessor can come back later to evaluate what the exercise. I mean, you could do the exercise today and maybe come back 1 month after, or you evaluate that. But if it's the physical assessment center, everything has to be done right there, immediate. Then it also facilitates assessors' collaboration and sharing. Can quickly do that online, even while the exercise is going on, without disrupting the exercise, like in the case of traditional assessment. So also challenges with this, there is also the possibility of not being able to assess some types of behaviors, especially when it has to do with when you have more people working together, maybe working in a team, and all that. It might not necessarily give you some behaviors to be evaluated if you're running your assessment virtually. Then there is the challenge of new set of skills needed for assessing virtually. So that means you also need to train your assessors, not just in the ORC method, but also in the use of your platform, how you need to use it. So these are steps that and there is a part of observation that assessors normally do. physical assessment center. So most likely, virtual assessment center is taking that away. You take, for example, inbox exercise, role plays and all that, where, or group exercise, where the assessor needs to observe the nuances of the candidate. Someone that is not talking, for example, gesticulating or making some eye impression. These are things that are now missed in virtual assessment center. But they could also speak, to the assessor as to who the candidate is. So most of these things are now not going to be present. But of course, in your design, you have to factor that in. Then the integration part of it, overall cost is reduced, quick cycle time, standardization and control, it's customizable. Once you have the platform, you can continue to use it from time to time. Precisely. Then also, there are new trends now that virtual assessment center has made possible, like I said earlier, the asynchronous scoring, where the assessment itself can take place today. The assessor can come back tomorrow, day after, or even weeks after to classify and evaluate. Then we also have software to facilitate scoring. There are some platforms that that make use of artificial intelligence. So automatically we look at candidate responses. This is good, particularly when you are doing inbox exercise, a day in the life analytical exercise. So they are able to read the responses and also able to generate comments for performance of the candidate. There are also software that help in generating reporting. Some platforms have that feature where the report is automatically generated, and the fidelity of the assessment increases. Now, as I said, we can now expand assessment center to a wider range of jobs, but that also comes with its challenges. For example, when you are using system-generated scoring, so that means you might think that taking out the assessor, but again, the system is programmed, right, only to identify what it has been programmed to do. And don't forget that we are human beings. Okay? Our behaviors could change at any time. We do certain things that people don't expect. So it might be difficult to rely completely on system-generated model of scoring assessment. Then there is also the challenge of, yeah, you can run your virtual assessment anywhere, but it is better when there is a system of authentication where you ensure that it's the right candidate that is sitting for your assessment. Okay. Then also there is the challenge to now, because we have access to technology, to just keep dumping everything on people using simulations that do not sufficiently reflect the competencies that are required for success on that job. We need to be careful of all these things when we design our assessment center. All right. So now go to the final part of outline, which is how then can you maximize and scale opportunities presented by virtual assessment center. So most of these things that about, we just try to put them in perspective. Now, the first thing here is to be mindful of technology platform that you use. Okay, if you are getting it from getting it off the shelf, be sure that you can use customized instruments, because you can't always have the instrument on the platform speaking directly to all the competencies you are assessing for your different jobs. So that is part of what you need to bear in mind. Then also the system's requirements. Okay? is it such that at least people that have maybe Windows 7 or whatever system that they are using, that they are, can still be able to access your exercise on your assessment platform? Then the second thing you need to pay attention to after the technology is the source of the tools that you are going to use. Is it going to be customized or you're going to get it off the shelf? You can't always get an off the shelf tool that is 100% perfect or that will speak to all the competencies. So maybe you are assessing for 5 competencies, for example. You might have your tools free. So there is now a need to ensure that you balance that out, other exercises that you used to assess your candidates. Then where you also need to be conscious. For example, what are the key results that are expected of the job? And what tool can you use? So if you have identified a particular tool as being able to reflect the job, okay, you must be sure that that tool is able to assess most of competencies. So it is not that tool that you now use to assess 1 out of 5, because that is more close to what the candidate will be doing from the job. So you must think about that when you're getting your tool. Either you're getting it off the shelf or it's going to be customized. But when it is customized, it is usually better because you'll get your psychologist. Maybe let me not say psychologist so that we don't think we have to go that far-fetched to design our tools. So maybe you get the people that understand the process and all that, and that also understand how to create assessment to sit down to create the scenario, and you try to validate it before you now put it on your platform and use. With that, you have a level of confidence that you are assessing the right dimension. Don't forget that that's one of the first of major considerations that you have to bear in mind when you are designing your assessment center. Then the other thing also is structuring your assessment. Now you can do this in several ways. There are some virtual assessment platforms that are yet to integrate into solutions, and there are some other ones too. There are home solutions too. You can try either you use Zoom, Track, and all that, but you must ensure that your assessment is, because that gives you a level of confidence that it is the right candidate that is sitting across the table writing your exercise. So with that, you are able to manage prompting, and you can see, everything that they are doing. So, I mean, if you are going to get the best from the virtual assessment center, ensure that it is structured. Then also, you need to get your assessors trained in ORCE method, and also the use of your technology platform. I can't emphasize this well, because when you have wrong assessors, please don't expect to have anything good out of your virtual assessment center, or even if it's the traditional method. Because assessors are actually the people that are observing the behavior. These are the people that will classify and evaluate it at the end of the day. So if they don't understand the process, then the system or process is already compromised. So these 4 areas that you need to focus on, they are really very broad when you begin to take them one by one. If you focus on technology and getting technology right, it's a lot of work and you need to do that. When it comes to the tools, if you have the wrong tool, you are assessing the wrong thing and you're going to get the wrong candidates. Don't forget cost of bad hires. You need to avoid that as much as possible. And because now that you are not seeing people physically, you have to go virtual. So you need to pay a lot of attention to structuring your assessment so that you're sure that it's the right candidate. Now, before we go into questions, let me just quickly also talk to how workforce can help, workforce assessment and solution in all these four areas. So we have a workshop that focuses on helping organizations set up their virtual assessment center using what you already have, using Zoom and some other additional technology that you might want to add to that so that you can start. For those who are considering their options, or for those who are still using the traditional method, you can might want to look at building your own, setting it up. And assessment instruments development is also one of the things that there is a process to developing valid and reliable assessment instrument. So we help organizations to do that. Our consultants, go into the organization, they study the job, analyze the job, come up with the appropriate exercise to validate the competencies that you've identified. And also, they go as far as getting subject matter experts to validate the exercise to now deploy it. Then we also offer remote tutoring solution. And finally, we have the Become an Assessor workshop where we take you through length and breadth of assessing effectively. This usually sits on the ORC method, which is widely and globally accepted as a standard for assessment and development center. When it comes to development center, there is an addition of F, which stands for feedback. So that it becomes ORCF. So we train a couple of assessors that too. And this is an overview of how workforce can help when you are considering migrating to virtual assessment center or making the system that you have already more effective. Thank you very much for listening in, and I will let Lamide take over as we go into the question and answer session.
Thank you very much, Akindele. That was a detailed and insightful session that we've gone through. So thank you so much again for that. At this point, we'll go into the question and answer session. There are certain questions I can see that participants have dropped. I believe that the presentation has also addressed some of these questions, especially towards the tail end of the session. For you to just let us know, what are the main advantages of assessment centers over the traditional resourcing process?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I think the first thing is the level of predictability of performance that assessment center has to. And that is because it makes use of multiple exercises. So most times when you talk about your traditional resourcing process, for example, you might be making reference to interview. Okay, don't forget that interview at first, you have a candidate that is smart. You can prepare well or prepare for the interview. And if you have someone who is not well trained, interview, especially competency-based interview methodology, you can be so excited and you find your candidates and end up at the end of the day with a bad hire. But because assessment center tries to simulate the work that the individual will be doing, so you see them more like you are giving them a taste of the job before they join the organization. So you see them more like on the job. So you see where the gaps are, unlike in interview, right, where people are just giving you words of what they have done. So that's the major advantage that the virtual assessment center has over the others. That ability to simulate the role before the individual joins. The potential that offers is that you can now see the gaps where the candidate is struggling, where the candidate is strong, and be able to take your decision on whether to hire or not.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next question has to do with impersonation or also authentication. So how do you, if you're looking at a virtual assessment center, or if you're looking at conducting things remotely, so how do you authenticate candidates' credentials before conducting any form of assessment, if need be? How can you also mitigate the issue of impersonation during the virtual assessment?
Okay, so I spoke about and that's just what I. So even from writing aptitude test, what we have now done is where when the candidate starts, ask them, you have to show the ID card, which captures the ID card. So it matches the picture you have on the ID card with the face that is sitting behind the system, right? And that is stored in the system. And also, it's able to identify quick movements behind. And when that happens, candidate is flagged. So you just have to ensure that you have a remote monitoring solution embedded in the virtual assessment to be able to curtail all the challenges of policy, cheating, and malpractice.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question has to do with in terms of creating an assessment. So in doing that, is it compulsory to, say, perhaps adopt existing assessments from foreign tools?
Okay. Okay, so that's a very good question. So, and my response to that is yes. And when I say yes, I mean that it can be the starting point of creating your own tool. So which means number one, you must understand how to create assessment tool. And when you read the foreign tool, you must know how you can now change it, all right, to adapt it to your environment, to your work setting. So it requires some knowledge of building valid and reliable assessment. So yes, you can start with that, but you would have now to, you must know how to adapt it to reflect your own work setting, your own situation, your own cultural background, all that. Yes.
Thank you. So because of time, unfortunately, we would only be able to take just one more question. And it has to do with, again, virtual assessment centers. So what would you recommend, or do you think there's any maybe a particular virtual assessment process or virtual assessment platform that you recommend as the best to use for virtual assessment centers?
Okay, as the best. So no one has paid me for advertisements. So I'm not the best. But look aside. There are a couple of them. So I wouldn't want to say there is one that is best, because you have to look at what you want to do, what you want to achieve. Person A might consider a particular one as the best because it's meeting his needs directly, but your needs might be different. So you have to evaluate what you want to do and which platform suits your purpose at first. I think that's the point we need to start with the end in mind, that what do I want to achieve? What form of exercise do I want to run? Before you even go out, start shopping for platform that you want to. And don't also forget that you might also want to see what you can do in-house with the technology that have. Of course, that will involve be getting involved people that know about that. So look at it from the point of what really do you want to achieve. Yes, you want to do virtual assessments, but what nature of exercising would you be doing? What would you be looking out for? Are you going to be depend so much on system-generated scoring, or are you going to be using assessors? They have to log in wherever they are and all that. So these are some of the considerations that you have to bear in mind to decide which platform that you want to go with. But the truth is, every one of us, if we have not adopted this now, sometime very soon, we will have to do that because our lives will not go back to normal. We will continue to do most of the things we do virtually, right? So we all need to start. We have not started shopping for the right one that can meet your.
Thank you very much for answering that, and thanks again. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. It was an absolute pleasure getting to talk to everyone. I'm sure everyone has learned, at least you have, even if it's one or two or even a lot of take-home notes from this session. And once again, we sincerely appreciate the time of our facilitator. Just to let everyone know, you will definitely get this webinar recording after the session. And in terms of for the people that we couldn't unfortunately answer the questions raised, we'll definitely address that in the follow-up email that will come from us. Also, please feel free to get in touch with us on our website. You'll be able to see our contact details. Feel free to schedule a consultation with us. And if we do have further questions or clarifications that you want the assessment and recruitment team to answer with regard to this topic or any other topic at all that has to do with recruitment and assessment, we'll be more than happy to address that as well. Thank you so much, everyone, once again. I wish you all a productive week.